Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Shelly and today I'm going to be thinking aloud, talking through my thoughts about the right and wrong way to write about art. Over the past couple of months, I have encountered a lot of books that have tried to, with varying degrees of success, incorporate the theme of art in their books. And I have realized when an author does it poorly, when an author takes a misstep in this realm, it really irritates me. And I've also realized that when an author does it particularly well, that author sits in a special place in my heart, and I will forever give them a little bit of credit because they were able to write about art in a way that made my heart sing. Of course, I'm going to be doing all of this while putting on my makeup, and hopefully I don't know how long it will be, so perhaps you'll need to grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, cozy up with a snack, and enjoy the ride. Of course, if you have thoughts about this subject, I would love to hear about them in the comments down below. I am ever so fascinated in our own obsession about art and aesthetics and what art means to us in our lives, and all of that, and the way it's portrayed in books, and the way the author uses art for one reason or another, and to convey one idea or another. So with all of that, if you also like all of these things and you are not yet subscribed, I would encourage you to subscribe and stick around. For those of you who are subscribed, thank you so much. You have no idea how much it means to me. But yeah, otherwise let's go ahead and just jump into the meat of this video. I've scooted to the side so there are plenty of room for pictures. Most of the books that have had egregious errors in them I don't own. They were either library books or I got rid of them. So I have plenty of room to put the face of the cover to shame on my screen here. So I think I'm going to go in a way, I'm going to maybe bounce back and forth. Maybe not, I don't know. Let me think about how I want to structure this video. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a point about art in literature, and I will try and drum up some examples of who does it well and then who does it not so well. So the first book, which I actually have to lift up, so I don't even know if I can let me see if I can get a little bit of makeup on this face. My skin has been quite in a good spot lately, and so I don't really want to cover it up with a bunch of makeup. I'm just really enjoying kind of the bare skinned look. Also, I'm on spring break right now, and I've just been loving grubbing it up. No makeup at all, just enjoying my time makeup free in 2023, at least when I'm not going to work. I am also not one of those people that has to wear makeup, but I do really enjoy the ritual and the process of it all. She proceeds to do half her makeup before even making her first point. My first point is when art is a very well-developed theme throughout the whole book. And I have a wonderful example for this. The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. The Marriage Portrait is based off of the Duchess of Ferrara. It's the life of Lucrezia, who in history, not a spoiler, it's actually in the before even the prologue, Lucrezia dies at 16, and the poem, which is another piece of art by Robert Browning, is called My Last Duchess, which is about the portrait of Lucrezia done by Bronzino, or by another artist whom I can't remember right now, but maybe I'll flash his name across the screen. The portrait is of Lucrezia, and it is the portrait of her just after she's married. Now, this book is called The Marriage Portrait, so it is already signaling that it's going to be about art, but it's so much more than just that. We find out that Lucrezia really values art in her life, that she herself is a talented artist, and that is an interest in her life. It shows that Maggie O'Farrell, the way that she writes Lucrezia, shows us, the readers, at the very beginning of Lucrezia's young life, young and very short life, that she was enamored with drawing, and she had taken a very curious, a special interest, a special curiosity in painting. And then also when she gets the portrait of herself done, that is a huge plot point throughout the book. There is extensive, well, not super extensive or anything, it's not a super long book, but there is quite a bit of description of what she wore. There's description about her hair, which is a prominent feature in the actual portrait, in the actual marriage portrait. She's got this beautiful reddish tinged hair. It's gorgeous, at least in the portrait it is. It talks about her beauty and her beauty as like a sense of art. She also has a special relationship with the artists that do her portrait, both for good and for ill. And that is, it's a whole thing in the book. And so what I liked was that not only did Maggie O'Farrell choose to name the book, or have the book really follow this, the marriage portrait of Lucrezia, that was really a central idea, but she does it in such a beautiful way because she is looking, I feel like, having a holistic view of what art is and what it means to people, and the relationship between artists and the way that we develop our own techniques, and then even up to the very last page, art continues to be an important theme throughout the book. And so this is something that I felt like it was done really well. Now, equal to have like the equal but opposite end of the spectrum, I actually thought Woman Eating, she tried to do the very same thing. Woman Eating is by Claire Coda, and the premise of the book is about a vampire who has an eating disorder. She doesn't want to kill anybody. She's obsessed with human food but knows she can't eat it herself. And she herself is making her way in the world for the first time without her parents. And she is an artist. Her father was an artist and created pieces of art. She herself is an artist, and she works at an art gallery. And so it really had a lot of potential to develop this idea about art. But what didn't work for me was that that whole theme of art could really be thrown out, because I don't feel like it added a lot to the character. I didn't really get a sense that she had a passion for art. The pieces that she referenced weren't described very well, so much so that I actually had to Google the piece that she was referencing quite often, because I didn't understand what she was getting at when she was talking about it, which to me is like is failed writing. Whereas the marriage portrait, my buddy reader, I read this with my friend Anita. She's amazing buddy reader, had so many great thoughts. And one of her thoughts was that you didn't even have to see the portrait in order to envision what it looked like, because Maggie O'Farrell did such a good job describing the piece. And I completely agreed. And then our American cover, which I actually prefer to the British one, perhaps a controversial opinion, but I like that you actually see the portrait of Lucrezia on here, the one that this book is based off of, the one that Robert Browning wrote about. But anyhow, with Claire Coda, with Woman Eating, the main character, she had all these avenues in which her life was affected by art, but there was still a gap. There was a gap that I wasn't getting, meaning that I had to like look up the pictures that she was talking about. I didn't really get a sense of the art that her father created, even though another character in the book collected the pieces of art that her father did. And yet I couldn't envision the art that he produced himself. In any way, shape, or form. I actually didn't really understand why art was so important in the character's life. I didn't understand why she put it, why this was a theme in her life. Whereas with Lucrezia, in contrast, she is at a very young age drawing things that have a lot of motion and a lot of life. She's thinking about, how do I get something to look alive, to look like it's in motion? And you're in her mind as she's thinking these thoughts. I think the most poignant part of Woman Eating was when she sort of lets loose and no, not with quotes, but, actually lets loose, and she creates kind of in her own unhinged way. She starts creating a piece of art, and I thought that worked okay. But for the most part, I walked away from that book not really understanding why art was such a theme in it. Like, I feel like even if she had said, like, art, this kind of art that the character is obsessed with has been around for as long as she has, because she's a vampire and has an extra long life, then I could see, like, maybe this art has, like, followed her through her life, and now she's continuing to think about it as she's on her own. That would have made more sense to me, but the author doesn't give us that. Instead, she sort of leaves us to wonder why she's, what the point was as to why she put all of the art in the book. I didn't get it. And so it really, like, at the end of it all, I'm like, why did you have me read all of those descriptions and all of those paragraphs and all of those sentences and all of those words about art when it seemingly had no point and contributed nothing to the book? It didn't reveal anything about the character. It didn't develop the character in any way. The theme wasn't very well developed, and so on and so forth. So art as a theme can go really well for me, or it can clearly go really poorly for me. And just so everybody knows, Woman Eating is currently stands as the worst book I've read this year. Okay, next up is what I am going to call art as a personality quirk. Now, typically this doesn't bother me so much so that I remember it like to the nth degree of my being. And I don't really hold a grudge, unlike Woman Eating by Claire Coda, where I'm just like, why? Just why? But I will say Peter Heller in the book The River, so he had two characters and they both liked art and they both had a connection with artists throughout their lives. And while they were there, one of the characters is copying something that he knows an artist to have done, which is to take things of nature and create a little sculpture while he's out in the woods hiking. And then, that's it. It's like about the act of creating this little sculpture out of natural items and looking at it, not even taking a picture of it or anything, but it's like the process of doing it and then looking at it and then moving on and just knowing that you did it. And I guess the character had learned about an artist who did such things, and so he was incorporating this as they are on their journey in this book. And then we don't ever revisit that act. It was there in order to show us a different outlet, a different quirk of that character's personality, and then that was it. And I don't know, it irritates me when authors do that, because I feel like, are you just like what is this supposed to be telling me about the character? Like, that he's quirky, that he likes art? Are you just showing off that you know about this specific artist and you wanted to give the character some actions? Like, is the author showing off that they know about this artist, and then they wanted to give a character that quirk in order to show off what they know? Or did you just want to make the character a bit more eccentric? But what bothers me is, like, when you have a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs explaining this thing that the character does, and then it just doesn't do anything for the rest of the story. It doesn't really add to the story, it doesn't really take away, but we never revisit it. And the journey that these characters go on is quite harrowing, and it would have been actually quite neat if at the end of the book, the other character, the opposite friend, ended up taking on the ritual for himself, as like maybe a tribute to their friendship or something. Like, that would have tied it all back in. But he didn't do that. He just left it there. He was like, my character does something quite quirky with art, and that is it. And I just didn't like that. Again, it doesn't eat away at me and bother me, but it doesn't do anything for me. And I often wonder why would you put it in then? All right, two more books. I guess I don't have equal and opposite points to either of these, but one of which is my most egregious One of the books is my just absolutely most egregious thing that you could possibly do in terms of art, and I find it so offensive, so offensive. And then the other one is just something that I thought was done particularly well. I'm gonna actually wait. I'm gonna hold off on the super offensive one, and I'm going to leave that for last. And I will talk, hopefully while I'm doing a little bit of eyeshadow, we'll talk about art that was done incredibly well in a book. So I was recently read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and oh my goodness. Okay, so this main character, he ends up going to a museum with his mother, and when he's a child, there is an accident or perhaps an attack on the museum, and he takes possession of a painting. This is why it's called The Goldfinch. This is really not a spoiler. Actually, reading the book will be an incredible experience for anybody. I think I have a hard time believing that people dislike this book because I just found it so engaging. And so when the character Theo takes possession of this painting, it ends up being a symbol of connection that he has with his mother. It also ends up being for him this item that eats away at him, that he becomes obsessive over, like obsessed with looking at it at certain parts of his life, with the obsessive nature of keeping track of it, staying in possession of it. It was almost like you were in the mind of somebody who couldn't let go of a piece of art that they saw. Now, here's what I thought was so brilliant about this book, was that pretty much every artist that I know, the medium of art, or the artistic nature of their personality, of who they are, the facet of them that is connected to art in some way, it tends to kind of come knocking back. This obsessive quality in their life. Perhaps I'll give an example. So my husband is a photographer and an artist. He has been a photographer for our entire relationship. He picked up a camera when we were first together, and he has continued to take pictures even to this day. And there have been periods of his life where he's not taking pictures, but he always is called back to it. He's always going back to this medium that kind of gets underneath him and whispers in his ear, and that he at certain points of our marriage has been incredibly obsessed with, learning all about cameras and all about lenses and all about color theory, and really we've had deep, intense conversations analyzing art and collaborating on certain pieces. And it's something that we've done together and that he's done alone, and that he has developed and worked on, and that he is mildly obsessed with. Similarly, I have like a creative bone in my body, and I feel so much better myself when I am doing something creative with it. Now, for me, I don't have one thing that I'm called back to. Maybe photography is one. I've done some writing. I have done I just like little creative projects that are sometimes hard to articulate. But one of the creative projects that I've done is like recreating book covers with my own stuff myself as the subject, and and I have like a whole Reels link. And the thing is like, I not only do I just enjoy it, but it's a lot of fun, it's challenging, it brings me a lot of joy while I do it. I don't get frustrated while doing it. And if ever I come to a time where I don't want to do that particular creative project anymore, I'm sure those creative energies will just get rerouted to something else. And I will start doing something else that brings me joy and fuels my creativity and makes me feel really good. And I just go with it. I have been a piano player. I draw a little bit. I've done photography. I play around in Photoshop. I make videos, and all of that is part of my creative life. And as long as I have an outlet routing that creativity somewhere, I've even routed it towards my children. We've done we've built castles together and put things together and made our own games. And I have poster boards that we all draw all over and then make a game out of it. I mean, it's just, so if I'm creative in some way, in some aspect of my life, I feel my best. And from what I've heard from writers, from poets, from other photographers, painters, that there is this, nuance, there is this part of their personality that art is so important to, and that they can't get rid of. And even my camera stopped because I'm all chatting so super excitedly about it. And even if they try, there is something within them, within their spirit, within who they are, that brings them back to the art that is calling them, or their artistry, or their artistic nature. And so what I thought was so great about Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch is that she captured that obsessive nature that artists have, that almost inescapable quality of the obsession of art that one has in this book, but she manifests it to being something that's actually real. So it's about Theo owning and being in possession of this painting that means so much more than the painting itself, but the painting itself ends up meaning something to him. And he becomes, it keeps on calling him back. He is plagued by it. He thinks about it. He wants to be in possession of it. It is constantly talking to him in a way. And I thought that was such an incredible way to capture like the obsessiveness of art. And I've never read anything by anybody that was really able to capture that in a way in the way that Donna Tartt did. And I was so appreciative of it because in a lot of ways it was like she showed me something that in a different way that I hadn't thought about before. And in this instance, it was the obsessive nature of art in our lives, or in the lives of people who are obsessed with art. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, obviously a lot of passion for this book. And it's, again, as a theme, it's woven throughout the entire book. It's done really well. She develops it with a lot of grace, with a lot of nuance, with a lot of thoughtfulness. She's not a one-trick pony, and you can definitely see the points that she's trying to make while not hitting you over the head with her points. So good. So good. Okay, I'm going to stop right now about The Goldfinch, but this is one of the books that I just really appreciate the way that she wrote about art. Okay, so the book that really bothered me, hopefully I can talk about this while putting on mascara because, okay, and I remember this from years, I read this book years ago, and the way I was written to as a reader really bothered me, so much so that years later, it still bothers me today. And it is a book by Hank Green. He is a YouTuber, philanthropist, writer. He has the channel, the Green Brothers, I think they're called. I can't remember right now. His brother's John Green, the writer of The Fault in Our Stars. And anyway, so they have a YouTube channel. So yeah, sorry Hank. Sorry, not so sorry. But Hank Green wrote a book called An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. I believe that's what it's called. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, yes. And the character I think she goes to art school. And he does this thing where he tries to make art a part of her personality, and is like, it's a theme in her life, although the book doesn't do that very well. But yeah, she really likes art, And then, so in the book, the main character is standing around some sort of corporation, and then she spots a Cindy Sherman photograph, and I know who Cindy Sherman is, and if you don't, I will, I don't know, I will leave her, I don't want to do what Hank Green did to me. So anyways, so the character spots a Cindy Sherman print, and it's like an original of this very famous photographer, one of her prints on the wall. And then he proceeded to make sure that we the readers knew who that was. And I kid you not, he like explained who she was through the thoughts of the character. And I was like, do you not think I know who this photographer is? And then I was like, okay, like I just felt like I was so talked down to. I was like, how rude. And if I didn't know who that person is, I would have just rather gone on with the reference unknown, because it wasn't even integral to the story, to the plot, to the character, to anything to know who Cindy Sherman was. But I was like, it was like somebody in an art museum being like, do you know that that's a Van Gogh? Van Gogh is blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, yeah, I know who Van Gogh is. Like, why would you think I don't? Why would you assume that I don't know who that is? And that, like, basically, why would you assume that I'm stupid? And I just felt like that's what he did in his book. And it really irked me. It really, really bothered me. Here I am, like, I'm going to stab myself in the eye with the mascara. And I couldn't believe that a writer would assume that his audience is so unintelligent that he had to explain a very minor reference to a sort of eccentric photographer in his book. And I was just like, that is so rude. And at the time I was just like, it didn't sit right with me. And then of course, I talk about it with my husband and I'm like, it just really bothered me that he did that. And then as the years have passed, I remember that, because I don't like being talked down to. I don't like to be assumed that I don't know, that I'm stupid. But it's just like, if I didn't know who a person is who's being referenced, I would just look it up. And it's not like this book was written in the 80s where cell phones weren't ubiquitous, or even, pre-80s or pre-90s. Like, this book was written, like, it came out in like 2010 or 2012. Everybody has cell phones. It is about the internet. Like, if you make a reference that I don't know and I want to know who that is, guess what? I can literally look it up on my phone. But instead, he goes and decides to, like, explain it to me and, and his audience. And I was just like, how rude. Like, how rude are you? And so ever since then, I've just been aware when I've been not like super keenly aware, but I have been aware when the author will take it upon themselves to assume that their audience doesn't know something, their readership doesn't know something, and then go on to explain it. Now, you get some grace when it comes to like YA, middle grade, although I do think that children are smarter and more intelligent than some writers perceive them to be, but I just wish that he would have given us some credit. And it still, to this day, bothers me that reference was in there, and that he explained it. I was just like, no. So that was the first and last Hank Green book I read. It was the worst book I read that year, and I will never read another Hank Green book again, because I don't like to be assumed that I am unintelligent. So yeah. I'm going to go back to the middle. Who knows how the makeup, hopefully the makeup turned out fine. I'm sure it turned out fine. It's not really about the makeup, it's about talking about art and my pet peeves with it, and when it's done well and when it's not done well. But anyhow, that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about art and what it means to me and when it's done well and when it's not done well. Again, if you have any thoughts about this topic, I would love to hear them, read them down below. That would be really awesome. But otherwise, just again, thank you for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.